My family mocked me for not having a degree. At dinner, my dad said, "Even a dog could do what you do." I left quietly. Next morning, I paid off their mortgage anonymously. Then I sent a letter, "Done by the dog you mocked." They ignored. The room went silent until my brother said one thing that made me. "I'm Arya, I've never quite fit into my family. Not because I didn't want to, but because somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't who they wanted me to be." Growing up in Charlotte, North Carolina, in a house where dinner conversations revolved around GPA averages, college acceptances, and career ladders, I always felt like I was walking around in shoes too big for me. My father, Clive, worked in banking, strict, traditional, and obsessed with appearances. My mother, Eleanor, played the role of the perfect suburban wife. She had her book clubs, charity events, and a habit of adjusting the way she spoke depending on who was in the room. Then there were my siblings. Daphne, the golden child. A Cornell graduate, now an investment strategist married to a corporate lawyer, raising 3 polished kids with names like Parker and Penelope. And my younger brother, Bennett. The quiet one. Studied architecture at NC State, never really bragged, always kind, but somehow always invisible in the family's constant parade of one-upmanship. I was the middle child. The dropout. The one who didn't finish her degree in education after a very public breakup with my ex-fiancé, Neil, who not only dumped me 3 weeks before our wedding but also took a good portion of my student loan money with him. I dropped out at 21 and spent years clawing my way out of debt. They all said I wasted my potential. They thought I was waiting tables or cleaning bathrooms out of laziness. They never asked how I actually built my life. Truth is, I run a cleaning company in Asheville now. It started with me picking up a few vacation rental gigs. Over time, I scaled up, hired staff, built relationships with property managers, created an online booking system, and slowly grew into one of the most reliable cleaning services in the county. My clients include Airbnb superhosts, surgeons with lake houses, and even one author who tips in signed copies of his novels. I make good money. Not flashy. Not 6 figures, but enough. More than enough. But in my family's eyes, I'm still the girl who couldn't finish school. Last Thanksgiving, everything came to a head. I drove down to Charlotte early that morning, pie in tow, nerves crawling up my spine like spiders. Every visit felt like a test, and I was always waiting to be graded. Dinner was as formal and stiff as it always was. Fine china. Crystal glasses. My mother's perfectly brined turkey. The wine flowed early. Everyone complimented Daphne's promotion, Bennett's new freelance design contract, and the twins' acceptance into some elite daycare program. I sat there, smiled when appropriate, offered help clearing dishes, and tried not to feel like the background character I always became in that house. Then came the moment I still played over in my head. My father, one glass of wine too deep, leaned back in his chair, looked at me and said, completely unprovoked, "You know, Arya, even a dog could do what you do. You don't need brains to push a mop." Daphne laughed. My mother didn't look at me. Just sipped her wine. I remember the way the stuffing stuck in my throat. I couldn't find my voice, not because I was weak, but because I knew if I spoke, I'd explode. So I stood up. Quietly took my plate to the kitchen. Told them I had an early job. Bennett offered to walk me out, but I waved him off. As I drove back to Asheville through the dark Blue Ridge Hills, I kept thinking, they'll never see me as more than a failure. No matter how much I build, they'll only see what I didn't finish. And that was the moment I decided they didn't need to see. They needed to feel. I didn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m., I sat down with my laptop, pulled up the property search tools my real estate attorney friend, Sarah, had shown me months earlier. I found their mortgage lender, account information, and, after some light legal gymnastics and help from Sarah's LLC, I made a wire payment of $74,213.56. I had the money. I'd saved for a down payment on a second investment property, but something about this felt cleaner. Along with the payment, I had a short, typed note mailed to the house. No handwriting. No name. Mortgage cleared. Paid in full. Done by the dog you mocked. And then I waited. At first, nothing. No calls. No texts. No email. The group family chat stayed silent, except for Daphne posting photos of her kids decorating their fake Christmas tree with color-coordinated ornaments. I wasn't mentioned. But then, a week later, I got a call from Bennett. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. "Hey, Arya, I think I know what you did. I'm not mad. I just want to talk. I swear I won't say anything to them if you don't want me to. Just call me, okay?" I didn't call back. Not yet. Not until I was ready. Then came Christmas. No invite. No messages. Nothing. And maybe that should have hurt more than it did. But the absence was almost peaceful. Like closing a door you didn't realize had been open and leaking cold air for years. Bennett texted me later that night. "If you're up for it, maybe just swing by? Just me. They won't say anything." I said I'd think about it. I waited until about 8 p.m., then drove over. The lights were still on. I knocked. Bennett answered. The house smelled like pine and glazed ham. Inside, everyone was sitting around the fireplace in that same stiff semicircle they always sat in when company came. No one said hello. No one asked how I was. It was like I wasn't real. I stood in the archway between the living room and the hallway, feeling the tension coil in the air like a loaded spring. Then Bennett cleared his throat. "You know, it's kind of funny. All this talk about who's doing what with their careers. But the only reason we're sitting in this house debt-free right now is because someone without a degree decided to pay it off." The room froze. My father stared straight ahead. My mother blinked like someone had snapped her out of a trance. Daphne looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Dad finally said, "That wasn't necessary." Bennett didn't back down. Neither was the dog comment. And then, silence. Not the tense kind. The hollow kind. I turned around and left. No one followed. Not even Bennett. But I knew, in that moment, I had said more by leaving than I ever could by staying. I didn't go home right away. I stopped at a small diner off I-85, one of those places with cheap coffee and the kind of servers who call you hon and don't ask too many questions. I ordered eggs and sat in a corner booth while the taste of my father's silence still lingered like acid in my chest. They knew. They knew exactly what I had done. But instead of gratitude, instead of acknowledgement, I was met with shame. Resentment, even. As if I'd exposed something they were trying desperately to keep hidden, that I was more capable than they'd ever let themselves believe. The next morning, Bennett texted. I shouldn't have said anything in front of him. I just couldn't take it anymore. I told him it was fine. I meant it, mostly. What hurt wasn't that he said it. What hurt was their reaction. The weeks after Christmas were oddly quiet. No birthday card from my mom in January, which was a first. No check-in texts from Daphne about getting together soon. It was as if I had stepped out of their shared delusion, and now they were trying to patch the hole I'd left in the family photo with silence. And I'll admit, there was a part of me that regretted the whole thing. Not because I paid off the house. But because I thought, deep down, that it might finally open a door. Maybe they'd see me. Really see me. A daughter who had built something from scratch. Who had failed, fallen, clawed her way back up, and quietly succeeded. But the truth is, some people would rather rewrite history than admit they were wrong. 2 months later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting before I even opened it. It was short. Tight cursive, the kind that looked like it was written with tension held in every letter. Arya, we are aware of what happened to the house. While we understand your intentions, it was inappropriate. Your father and I are not in need of charity, nor do we accept it. We ask that you refrain from further financial gestures in the future. Eleanor, no thank you. No, we're sorry. Just a sterile attempt to reassert control. I didn't cry. I just placed the letter down on my kitchen counter, poured myself a glass of wine, and laughed. I laughed the kind of laugh that carries years of wounds stitched shut with resolve. Because who does that? Who receives the gift of financial freedom and sends back a complaint? And yet, that was exactly the kind of people my parents were, more offended by the implication that they needed help than grateful for the help itself. I started to move on. My business was growing faster than I could manage on my own. I hired 2 new employees, one of whom, Marina, had been in and out of shelters for years and just needed someone to give her a chance. She reminded me of myself at 22, scrappy, angry at the world, but sharp. She worked hard. I gave her more hours, then trained her to handle bookings and client follow-ups. We talked often during late-night drives to last-minute cleanings, and one night she asked me, "Do you ever think about just cutting them off?" I hesitated. "I think I already did." "You don't talk about them like they're strangers," she said. "You talk about them like you're still waiting for them to come around." That one stung. Because she was right. I kept saying I didn't care what they thought, that I had no expectations. But somewhere in me, the child who wanted her father's pride and her mother's kindness was still curled up, waiting for a nod that would never come. Spring arrived, and with it, another invite from Bennett, this time for his 30th birthday. It wasn't a family event. Just a small gathering in Asheville. He was renting a space near the River Arts District and wanted me there. "I don't want them to come," he told me. "Just friends. People who get it." I agreed. That night, something shifted. We sat around a fire pit. Bennett had invited people from all corners of his life, coworkers, artist friends, even one of my employees who'd taken a liking to him. He toasted halfway through the evening and said, "I just want to thank Arya. Not just for being here tonight, but for being the only one in our family who figured out what actually matters." The group clapped. I blushed. But more than that, I felt seen. Later, when we were alone packing up empty drink cups and folding chairs, he looked at me and said, "I know it doesn't fix anything. What they said. What they didn't say. But I need you to know something." I waited. "You didn't just pay off the house. You paid off a piece of our family's arrogance. And that's why they can't forgive you." I sat with that for a long time. Because he was right. To them, my gesture wasn't kind. It was humiliating. Proof that their picture-perfect hierarchy had cracks. That their lesser child had managed something greater than any of them. And instead of being proud, they felt exposed. And maybe that was the point. Maybe I wanted them to feel that exposure, to squirm in the silence they created every time they diminished me. But I also wanted closure. Not revenge. Not really. I wanted to stop being the ghost at their table. That summer, I finally took the vacation I had been postponing for years. I flew to British Columbia, stayed in a lakeside cabin with no Wi-Fi, and journaled every morning with a coffee in hand and the smell of cedar filling the air. And as I sat by the water one morning, watching the sun rise over the tree line, I thought to myself, they can keep their silence. I found my peace. But of course, the story didn't end there. Because sometimes, the universe has one more twist. It was late August when Bennett called me again. I was on my way to meet a new vacation rental client just outside of Black Mountain when his name lit up my phone. I let it ring through to voicemail. He almost always left one, and sure enough, by the time I pulled into the gravel driveway, the notification blinked. I pressed play. "Hey. I know things have been quiet. But you should know, Dad had a fall. It wasn't terrible, but enough to shake him up. He's at Presbyterian. Mom's been circling the wagons, and Daphne's in full-on command mode. Just figured you'd want to know. No pressure." I sat in the car with the AC blowing too cold. The sun was bright, my windshield dirty, and all I could feel was that complicated, old pull. It wasn't guilt. Not exactly. It was more like duty. Like a muscle memory I didn't want to flex. Later that evening, I found myself parked outside the hospital in Charlotte. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. I hadn't even brought flowers or a card, just my keys, my phone, and a bag of sour candy I'd picked up at a gas station. Old habit. My dad used to sneak them into his suit pockets during church when we were little. The hospital lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and anxiety. The woman at the front desk gave me his room number without question. When I walked into the room, the air got thick. My mother was perched in the corner chair, reading something on her Kindle. She didn't look up. Daphne stood by the window, arms crossed, like she was managing a boardroom. My father lay in bed, eyes closed, a bruise blooming purple across his temple. I paused just inside the doorway. Daphne turned first. "You didn't need to come," she said flatly. "I didn't come for you," I replied, before I could stop myself. My mother finally looked up. "He's sedated," she said. "They'll discharge him tomorrow." I nodded. My eyes moved back to the man in the bed. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, he was still a tall man, but diminished. Vulnerable in a way I wasn't used to seeing. His hands looked pale. His mouth slacks. "He fell in the driveway," Daphne added. "Didn't call anyone. Neighbor found him." I wanted to ask why no one had checked in on him. Why no one had noticed that he wasn't answering calls or emails. But I didn't. It wasn't my place anymore, apparently. I stayed for less than 10 minutes. Neither of them offered me a seat. I didn't expect them to. As I turned to go, my mother said something that made me pause. "Don't mistake proximity for forgiveness." I turned to her, heart suddenly thudding in my ears. "I don't want forgiveness," I said quietly. "Just the truth." She didn't answer. And I didn't wait. A week passed. Then 2. Bennett kept in touch, letting me know Dad was recovering slowly, that physical therapy had been scheduled, and that Mom had hired a part-time home nurse despite pretending they didn't need help. Then one day, he texted me a photo. Just a simple snapshot. Their front porch. A small box sitting beside the door with my letter in it, the one I'd sent months ago. The one that said, "Done by the dog you mocked." It was crumpled, coffee-stained, like it had been shoved in a drawer and forgotten, then rediscovered during a spring cleaning binge. Bennett had written under the photo, "Found this in Dad's desk drawer." He kept it. I didn't reply. But later that night, I sat on my porch with a blanket around my shoulders and read through some old journal entries. Ones I'd written years ago when I was still scrubbing grout and worrying whether I'd make rent. Back then, I wrote a lot about needing to prove myself. About hoping they'd eventually see I wasn't a failure. Now, reading those same words, they didn't feel like mine anymore. I wasn't that girl. I didn't need to be seen. It was the second week of September when Bennett showed up at my house. Unannounced. No warning. I was in leggings and an oversized hoodie, pulling banana bread out of the oven, when he knocked. "Did you drive 2 hours for baked goods?" I asked, arching a brow. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Can I sit?" We sat at my kitchen table, and he took a long sip of water before speaking. "Dad asked about you." That made me freeze. "He what?" Bennett nodded. "Said he wanted to talk to you. Said he regretted some things." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't sure I believed him. "He's not dying," Bennett added quickly. "Don't think it's some deathbed confession thing. He's just quiet. Different. Like the fall knocked something loose besides his pride." I folded my hands in my lap. "I don't know if I want to talk to him." "That's fair," he said. "But I think you should hear him out. Not for him. For you." 2 days later, I sat across from my father on the back porch of the house I helped pay for. He wore a thick flannel shirt, his posture still stiff, but his face a little softer. The bruise had faded. His voice was weaker than I remembered. "I was proud," he said, right away, like he'd been rehearsing it. "Too proud." I didn't respond. I was afraid that if you succeeded without a degree, it would make all our sacrifices look like a waste. There it was. The truth spilled out like bourbon. "I was wrong," he said. And then, "I'm sorry." I didn't cry. I didn't rush to forgive him. But I nodded. And we sat there for a long time, two people who had spent years building stories about each other that weren't quite true, letting the quiet do what it does best, say the things words never could. Over the next few weeks, I visited my father a couple more times. Never for long. We didn't suddenly become close. There was no magical reconciliation montage or father-daughter bonding moment over sweet tea and football. But something shifted. He was quieter. More careful with his words. Occasionally reflective. He asked how the business was going. He even asked about Marina, my employee, the one he'd have scoffed at a year ago for her criminal record and chipped nails. "I hope she sticks with it," he said. "That's real work." That might sound small, but from Clive, the man who once said even a dog could do what you do, it was monumental. Still, I kept my distance. Because something still simmered under the surface. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. Sometimes it never flips. And I wasn't sure I wanted it to. But revenge? Revenge, when served quiet and cold, doesn't ask for permission. By mid-October, the story of the mortgage payment had finally taken its rightful place as an unspoken tension between everyone in the family. Daphne refused to mention it. Mom never brought it up again. And Dad, well, I don't know what he told himself to sleep at night, but I had the feeling that the bruise on his ego hadn't faded quite as fast as the one on his forehead. Still, no thank you. No real acknowledgement. So I decided to leave them with something they couldn't ignore. My family was very involved in their country club, the Glenbridge Club in Charlotte. Golf tournaments, charity galas, the whole facade. And one of the events coming up in November was a public recognition banquet where longtime members were honored for their community contributions. My parents were being recognized for financial stewardship and long-term neighborhood investment. Oh, the irony. Now, here's the thing, that mortgage? The one I paid off? It had been processed through my LLC, Clear Spring Property Holdings. A completely legitimate business entity registered under my name. And I'd done just enough paperwork to keep it visible but hard to trace, unless you knew where to look. So I made a few calls. I contacted the Glenbridge Club anonymously and offered to sponsor a portion of the banquet dinner in the name of Clear Spring Property Holdings, as a way to honor the couple whose financial integrity helped stabilize a legacy home and bring peace of mind to their family. A donation of $2,000 secured a prime page mention in the event program, a few words from the podium, and a line printed on every napkin. I didn't attend the event. But Bennett did. He sent me a picture from the venue. The program listed, special recognition sponsored by Clear Spring Property Holdings in gratitude for your trust and the opportunity to support your home and legacy. Right beneath my parents' names. And on the napkins? Legacy secured. Debt-free. Courtesy of Clear Spring Property Holdings. Daphne was livid. Mom was mortified. Dad apparently sat in stunned silence the entire dinner. Bennett told me that when one of the board members asked who or what Clear Spring was, my mother smiled tightly and said, "It's complicated." And that was the most honest thing she'd ever said. A few days later, I received a package. No note. Inside, the crumpled napkin. My original letter. And a check made out to Clear Spring Property Holdings in the amount of $74,213.56. I laughed. They still didn't get it. I mailed it back. No letter this time. Just wrote across the front of the check, rejected. Keep your pride. I'll keep the deed. I haven't spoken to my parents since. Daphne blocked me on every platform, which was the most useful thing she's ever done for me. Dad hasn't tried again. I think he understands now that some wounds can close without needing to be patched with forced apologies or performative thank yous. And Mom? Well, she keeps her pearls and pride in the same jewelry box. Bennett and I still talk every week. Sometimes he brings his new girlfriend to visit. He's the only one who ever truly saw me. And maybe that's all I ever needed. As for me? The business is thriving. Marina now manages operations. I'm looking into a second location in Boone. I still clean sometimes, not because I have to, but because I want to remember where I came from. Hands in the work. Pride in the grit. I don't need their approval anymore. But it felt good, so damn good, to write the final line in a story they tried to narrate for me. They told the world I was a dropout. I showed them I was an owner. They said even a dog could do what I do. So I built the kind of life a pedigree can't touch. And in the end? The dog bought their house. The human walked away with her head high.